Right now, he's the Manhattan Borough President, but Mark Levine has his eye on city's finances. He's running for comptroller. So here's the question. Why do you want to be comptroller, and how would you do things differently?
Well, it's great to see you, Marcia. Thank you for having me. Good to be back. New York City has challenges on multiple fronts right now. We have an affordability crisis. We have public safety problems. We have a lack of confidence in government. And now we have the threats coming from the Trump White House with all the chaos and cruelty that's coming New York's way. We need a strong comptroller now to attack these challenges, to stand up to Trump. And I'm running now to be that leader, based on a record of taking on tough challenges for New York City in my time in the council and now leading as borough president.
So I'm curious about one thing. How do you see, what role do you see for the comptroller standing up to President Trump?
Well, first of all, Democrats in general need to be standing up right now. The headlines are exhausting. It can be hard even to know how to react. And I get the tendency to want to just retreat. That's not the right strategy. We need to stand up to this agenda, which is targeting New York City, targeting people in New York City, whether they are immigrants or LGBTQ New Yorkers or simply people seeking reproductive care. We've got to stand up to that. The comptroller also is key, particularly if there's a financial threat. And we faced that last week. We had this period of chaos where all federal contracts for nonprofits were canceled in New York City. This could have put nonprofits out of business. It may come back, by the way. We've had a pause for now. But the comptroller could fight to get city contracts paid out more quickly so that these nonprofits can remain solvent while the threat from the Trump administration is pending.
You know, there are some people who think that the Democrats haven't coalesced around a message to deal with what's coming out of Washington. Do you agree with that?
I'm afraid I do. I think there's been fear about an election that felt like a repudiation for Democrats, not just...
It was a repudiation.
Yeah. Well, look, New York City had a 16-point swing to Trump. And if you look at it neighborhood by neighborhood, Marcia, it's a very dramatic story because the biggest swings were not in Park Slope or the Upper East Side. They were in places like Washington Heights and the West Bronx and Flushing and Richmond Hills, and these are working class communities of color. And I think Democrats need to listen to those voters. And it's hard. It's hard to hear that people turned against you, but they want results.
So how do you get them to turn back to you if that's the case?
We need to solve problems. We're in control in New York City and New York State. And if people are not happy with the situation here, they're going to blame Democrats. We need to address the affordability crisis. We have to address concerns about public safety. We have to show that we're competent leaders. This has national implications. New York City has to show that Democrats can lead, and that's why I'm running to be comptroller.
So I guess one of the questions I've had for a long time is about New York City's property tax system. And I wondered whether it needs to be overhauled because some people say it's unfair to lower middle class people who seem to be paying the lion's share of the taxes on property taxes. What's your position on that?
The city property tax system is riddled with inequalities. A home in Park Slope pays a lower rate than a home in Bed-Stuy or East New York. And there's just no defense of that. Now, it's very complicated to fix. It requires a lot of action in Albany, right? So this has been elusive, but I'm all in on this fight. We've got to fix the property tax system to make it fair, especially for middle-income homeowners.
But see, you know, it's an interesting question how you do it, because I remember when Bill de Blasio first became mayor all those years ago, and he said, one of the first things I'm going to do is fix the property tax system. Well, he did 8 years as mayor. We're almost at the end of Mayor Adams' 4 years as mayor. That's 12 years where there's been inertia on this issue that everybody says is really important and really hurts lower income people. What's the solution? I mean, is it something the comptroller has to do, the mayor has to do, Albany has to address it as well, but it's New York City's tax program, so it isn't up to New York City to fix it.
Actually, it's in control of Albany more than you might think. These are taxes leveled levied in New York City by New York City, but the structure is set in Albany. There are components that the city controls, and we need a partnership here, but this will require Albany action, and I think that's complicated this. Also, there's going to be winners and losers, right? And any dramatic reform of the property tax system, and so that's made it politically complicated. I'm ready for that challenge. Comptroller doesn't have direct power to solve this alone, but it's an important voice in agitating to fix the many inequalities in property taxes in New York.
You know, the reason I asked the question is because I think one of the overriding concerns of New Yorkers these days is the high cost of living in New York. And so if you were to fix the property tax system, that would just be one part of trying to make things cheaper for people to live here.
Look, the rents are out of control. Average rents in Manhattan now, over $5,000 a month. This is pushing out not just low-income people, it's pushing out bus drivers and teachers and social workers. It's too hard to find childcare you can afford in many neighborhoods. There's so many ways New Yorkers are being squeezed, and they're leaving New York City because of these costs. We have got to build more housing, Marcia. We've got to build more housing that New Yorkers can afford. I've been all in on this fight as borough president. We've spoken about it before. We've got to go citywide. The comptroller has a role here. We should be using some of the pension money, consistent with our fiduciary responsibility, to invest in financing affordable housing in New York City that might not otherwise get built. So as comptroller, this will be a top priority.
Well, how do you get the pension funds to do that?
Well, the comptroller is the primary mover in the 5 pension funds in New York City. Obviously, there's a governance structure. You work with labor and other leaders. But I think this is a pretty compelling vision and one the city has done in the past. I just want to take it to the next level. I see.
I've always had a question about that idea because, you know, the role of the pension funds is to protect the pensions of people who have retired from New York City. And so how do you make financing housing financially feasible so that you preserve the money in the pension fund so that people who retire actually get benefits?
Look, we have to prioritize protecting the retirement savings and future pensions of everyone who's served our city. We don't compromise on that. But we can also make investments that are consistent with our values, that don't take undue risk. And there are affordable housing projects we can invest in that have a solid income stream, that do not mean we have to take on undue risk, but that will still get affordable units built that might not otherwise come to fruition. We can strike that balance. That's what I'll achieve as comptroller. So how do you want to put your own personal stamp on the office if you were to win? Well, I think deeply about the functioning of government. And it pains me to see in agency after agency, we're still stuck in the 20th century or maybe even the mid-20th century. There are still fax machines in use in New York City government, Marcia. And if you want to get affordable housing built, since we're on that topic, you got to add 12 months, 18 months to the timeline just to wait for the paperwork to be approved at HPD. We've got to modernize these structures. And as comptroller, I'll use the power of audit and investigation and oversight to push the city to bring its systems into the 21st century to streamline and produce results for New Yorkers. We only have about 30 seconds left, but do you think that's really attainable? Absolutely. I mean, bureaucracy is bureaucracy. Yes, but if the comptroller is pushing and using the powers of the office, oversight, auditing, investigations, even subpoena, we can get it done. It's in the interest of New Yorkers. New Yorkers want this. We can get it done. Mark Levine, we're going to have to leave it right there for now. But our conversations continue right after the show on our streaming channel, CBS News New York.